Welcome back to the GSMC Hockey Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. We're here talking fourth segment of the night, Buffalo Sabres season preview, continuing the series that we're doing all throughout this offseason, talking about each of the 32 NHL teams. The Buffalo Sabres are in a very interesting position. Coming off of a year that they were just on the outside looking in of the playoffs, they were in a wild card race for a good bit of it, but however just trailed off at the end. Wasn't one of the wasn't one of the final 3 or 4 teams that were really contending. I'm actually going to pull up the NHL standings to get their exact. I think they were around 80-something points, and wild card ended up being 93. They were 84 points. Wild card ended up being 91. So 7 points out of the playoffs. They still haven't ended their over a decade now long playoff drought. That seems like will never end for the Buffalo Sabres. Every player that leaves goes to a playoff team. However. But for the Sabres, it's just been a very long time for them. But they're in a good spot. 84 points in 82 games played, and they got better objectively this offseason. What did they do this offseason? First off, they were able to last year re-sign their 2 first overall pick defensemen. They extended Owen Power and Rasmus Dahlin, who both of their contracts are kicking in now. They also have Bowen Byram on this team, who can be a fantastic young defenseman for this team. They go out and get Henri Jokiharju, who is a fantastic defenseman, and then they have Connor Clifton. So they only have one more defenseman spot to fill, and they still need to fill it. Next up, in their forward group, they go out and they get Ryan McLeod, who we just spent an entire segment talking about. We'll let you guys go back to that segment if you are wondering my thoughts on Ryan McLeod. They go out and get Nicholas Aube-Kubel, who can be pretty good for their forward core. But what's fantastic about this forward core is how young it is. Tage Thompson's 26. Dylan Cousins, 23. They got Ryan McLeod, who's 24, will be 25 next season. Zach Benson, 19 years old, who's going to probably play in the NHL this next season. Jack Quinn, who is 22 years old. JJ Peterka, who is 22 years old. Payne Krebs, 23 years old. All their young guys are gonna finally play for their NHL team. They have had such a fantastic prospect pool in recent memory, and they add to it this past offseason by adding Konsta Helenius, who is a good player. They have him listed as signing his entry-level contract. I believe he has signed his entry-level contract, which is very, very shocking to me. At 14th overall, I thought that he would for sure be going to Finland for another year no matter what. But this team, where they have questions at is goaltender. They still don't have Ukko-Pekka Lehkonen re-signed, and he just filed for arbitration, so we'll see how that ends up. Then you have Devon Levy, who can be a fantastic goalkeeper with a lot of potential, but we haven't seen it yet. They also have James Reimer, a 36-year-old under contract for the next season. Who goes to the AHL? I think it has to be James Reimer. I think you have to run with UPL and Devon Levy, but we'll see how that plays out. This team can be a playoff team. The Atlantic, however, is so difficult this next season. You're looking at the Atlantic, and the Panthers are a for sure playoff team. I think the Bruins are a for sure playoff team. The Maple Leafs are a for sure playoff team. The Lightning are a for sure playoff team. Then who's the 5th? Even if there is a 5th, because the Metro, the Rangers, the Canes, the Islanders, the Capitals, the Penguins, the Flyers, the Devils, the Blue Jackets are all going to be good next, at least better. The Blue Jackets might not be good. We think the Flyers might take a step back from last season, and the Hurricanes might take a step back from next season. But did the Hurricanes take a 25-point step back from next season? I don't know. Brady Shea, Teuvo Teravainen, Brett Pesce, Stefan Nesson, it might have been. Martin it might have been, but we still don't know. So I could imagine it goes 4-4 split for the wildcard teams again this next season, which means they're going to need to be one of those 4 teams. Who gets left out in the Atlantic? You have the Senators, who want to be competitive next season for a playoff spot. You have the Red Wings, who want to be competitive next season for a playoff spot. You have the Sabres, who want to be competitive next season for a playoff spot. There's two teams in the entire Eastern Conference who I legitimately don't think have a chance at a playoff spot next season, and that's only the Blue Jackets and the Canadiens. Every other team is going to be competitive in the East. This is a stacked conference. I mean, you look at the Western Conference. You look at the Western Conference, and it's the Minnesota Wild, the San Jose Sharks, the Anaheim Ducks, the Seattle Kraken, the Calgary Flames are not going to be competitive. And then, like, the LA Kings, the Vegas Golden Knights, are one of those teams are going to get into the playoffs just because one of those two teams need to get into the playoffs because the rest of the Pacific is not that great. In the Central, I mean, you have the Blackhawks, who are my dark horse next year, but they could still, they need to improve by 40 points. They need to get 20 more wins than they had last season. Did they do enough this offseason to get that? Probably not. But hey, who am I to say that? The Eastern Conference, however, is this conference is the strongest we've ever seen an individual conference in a very, very long time. I'd be shocked, or I wouldn't be shocked, should I say, when one of these big teams gets left out. There's going to be a team full of talent outside of the playoffs next season. Is that the Buffalo Sabres? Are they still a year away? I'm going to say yes. But I think that they're going to be heartbreaking fashion away, barely missing the playoffs. They have the talent on this roster that I really like. Owen Power is going to take that step up next season. He's going to be making 8.35. He needs to take that step up. He didn't impress me too much last year, but he still looked good enough to, not count him out, I would say. And then you have Rasmus Dahlin, who is a fantastic NHL player, deserving of the contract he has. Well, maybe not $11 million, but deserving of a big contract. And then, all of their prospects I love. I think I've had Payne Krebs high on my draft board before. I've had JJ Peterka high on my draft board before. I've had Jack Quinn high on my draft board. Zach Benson I've liked. Ryan McLeod, I've said that I like. Dylan Cousins, I like. Tage Thompson is fantastic. Tage Thompson is truly has the potential to be a superstar in the NHL if they finally figure it out around him. And then their goaltending situation is pretty good. This Sabres team is too good to not be in the playoffs, but I'd be shocked if they end up in the playoffs. I think that they're going to finish at here's my official prediction. I think they finish 5th in the Atlantic on 88-ish points. Is somewhere between 86 and 90 and just barely miss out on the playoff spot. They might still be 1 year away. But if I was the Sabres, I would really want to compete for a playoff spot this season. I think that they're good enough too. Granted, they do need to figure out a couple of contract situations. They need to get Ukko-Pekka Lehkonen figured out, but he's under arbitration. They need to get Payne Krebs figured out, and they need to get Beck Malenstein figured out. But all of those guys are going to get contracts. It's going to look pretty good. They still need probably one more defenseman that can really play at an NHL level. I don't love Jacob Bryson or Dennis Gilbert. I don't think either of them are really that sixth defenseman that you need on an NHL team, especially with they have a lot of talent and small defensemen. They need they need to go out and get a sixth defenseman that's just huge, like a 6'5", 6'6" defenseman, kind of like an Anton Silya from this past draft, but like a Tyler Myers mold of a defenseman. I don't know who's available. I can't think off the top of my head who could be available. I know Mikhail Sergachev maybe could have been that role, but he is now in Utah instead. But for the Buffalo Sabres, it looks really good. I don't think that it's good enough to be a playoff team. That's my official prediction. I think they finish 5th in the Atlantic, just outside on the cusp of a playoff berth, but it's going to be such a competitive division. Nobody's going to really run away in the East. This next season is going to be very fantastic to watch. I can't wait to get to it. As I'm going to say, after I promise you you're going to hear this spiel 29 more times because that's just the truth. This season's going to be fun. So that'll wrap it up for our 4th segment of the night. When I come back from my 4th and final break of the night, we'll be talking RFAs that filed for arbitration and RFAs that didn't file for arbitration.